Howdy, howdy. Welcome to the Humans Aren't Real podcast. I'm Wolf Vision, and with me is Frylock. Today's
Hey,
episode is Matrix.
and
We,
why is it the Matrix?
well, I heard it was an anniversary of sorts.
We missed it by quite a few months, but yes, it is.
So this year is, was it 25?
Yes, sir.
25 years. So we
It, or-
decided to
it
do,
originally came out on March 1st, 1999.
wow.
I know, right?
So we decided to do a conversation of Matrix. We both enjoyed it highly. So we're going to have a few talking points and let's get into it. Let's start off with some of your first thoughts when you first watched The Matrix.
Well, oh, well, when you say that, you got to talk about two different time frames. When it originally came out versus now. Like
When it first came out. When it first came out.
yeah. Oh yeah, I remember the first time. Like I know I saw it in theaters.
Uh-huh.
But I don't remember seeing it in theaters. But I remember seeing the trailer and just being blown away. Just like, I mean, first of all, you got your bullet time, which at that time was new. It's something we've seen a million times since then. But at that time, nobody was filming things the way they filmed those bullet time sequences, those rotating sequences. I mean, I think it's to a point now we don't have to explain what bullet time is. I feel like everybody
Right.
knows what that is.
Right.
But I mean, you know, shortly after, I mean, almost immediately after it came out, that's everybody was doing it. So the movies just got so oversaturated with it that it became like a novelty. Like you just didn't care. But at that time, nobody was doing that. They invented that. And it blew me away. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, what is this? What's going on? Because this is before we knew you were in a virtual reality type simulation and all this and that. And I just remember the trailer just blowing me away. And I was like, I have to see this. I have to see this immediately. This is one of those few I probably saw on day one. I didn't wait till like Saturday or Sunday. Like I went Friday night or Thursday night to watch that immediately. Like back then, it was just mind blowing. The trailer alone, just it was something you've never seen before, and it was along the lines of an idea that you've never really seen or heard of either. And it's funny because we're looking at it 25 years later. It's more relevant now than it was back then. And it was pretty relevant back then. We just didn't know how relevant it was at the time.
Right. So The Matrix. When I first started watching it, and the concept of Trinity being hunted down by FBI looking people, and then she and random, like, utility concrete dump truck are having a face off at a phone booth.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? Like, is it really that serious for this phone booth?
Yeah.
That, like, unknown, but the urgency of it was just so awesome. I love that idea of your escape route is a payphone. You know,
Yeah.
it's a landline. Like,
Landline. I think most people aren't going to know what you're talking about when you say landline.
well,
Like,
let alone a payphone in real life, right?
yeah.
At least here in the U.S., like, how many payphones do you still see exist?
Definitely, you definitely don't see operational payphones. You might see the remaining carcass of a payphone, and you're like, "What's that?"
Right.
But yeah, payphones don't exist anymore.
But this, like, watching it kind of gave me uh, you do you remember the movie Hacker?
Hackers? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Hackers. Yeah. It kind of
Absolutely.
gave me that vibe as soon as you like transition after like the Trinity intro and it goes into Neo and he's just like has all his like eh, the that off-white keyboard and the big old CRT monitor with just
Yeah.
all the like gear around him. It was so mind-blowing watching it going, they created a universe here that is just awesome.
I just remember the whole like sci-fi. It's obviously a sci-fi movie, and when you watch the trailer, even then, you're like, "Oh yeah, this is obviously sci-fi."
Yeah.
But it was kind of like a world of sci-fi that you hadn't really seen yet. And like at the time, we didn't really, the trailer's coming out, and we're watching the trailer. We don't know what it's about, but it definitely captures your imagination of like the possibilities. And it's one of those movies like you see things like trailers and you're like, "Oh, well that looks really cool. I hope it actually goes somewhere." This is one of those few like sci-fi movies that really did go somewhere. I mean, like it went exactly where it should have went. It was great. Still is.
Yeah. It set off definitely a movement of what is reality.
I mean, hell, there's an actual scientific theory now that basically says that's possible.
Yeah.
Like there
Um,
is literally a theory that we are living in a virtual reality and we don't even know it.
right. So, speaking of VR, what things do you enjoy out of this movie besides the bullet time? Things that you
I
can
mean,
recall going, okay, that piece or that part of the movie was just amazing.
I think one of the things that really like when I realized what they were doing with it, it caught me off guard to where I was just like, holy crap, that would be awesome. But the fact that they could just literally be like, hey, I need to learn how to fly this helicopter. And then, like, within a split second, they download a program that shows them
Yeah.
how to do it, and they're like an expert.
Yep. The
Just that
whole
concept.
download into your brain directly the information and you're an expert is just awesome.
Oh, yeah. And it's just like, oh, I need guns, lots of guns. And then it's like literally every gun that exists or ever could exist just appears and they can just grab whatever they want. Like, I mean, just imagine if you could do that now.
Right.
Like, if you're like, oh, well, I want to fly to Hawaii. And you're like, oh, well, go ahead, download me a helicopter and download the instructions on how to fly it in my head, and let's go.
Right.
Like that's it's just the concept. I have to say, like, you see movies or like TV shows, video games, any kind of media, and there's very few stories that you see the story, and then you're just like, who comes up with this? Like, what are you like? What's your brain doing to come up with that type of an idea?
Yeah.
And this is one of those. Like, what were these dudes thinking when they wrote this movie? It's just how do you come up with that idea? It's just it's insane. nowadays it's kind of a normal idea, but 25 years ago, like, no, it was ridiculous. I mean, heck, even Will Smith was one of the first people that was approached to play Neo. And the specific reason why he said no, because he said he didn't understand any of it and he didn't know whether or not it was going to be good. So he was just like, oh, I didn't understand it. So I said no.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a movie that is extremely complicated, but not just complicated. It's actually good. Like if you actually work out the ideas of what they were doing, well, we're talking about the first one here. You work out everything that they're trying to do, it was good. It wasn't like, oh, well, is this actually good or is it bad and we just don't understand it? Like it was actually good. Most of us didn't understand it, but still, once we started to, we realized it's actually a really well thought out movie. And it's like, how do you come up with those ideas? How do you come up with this structure and then follow through with it? Of course, they didn't really follow through very well with the second and third one,
Yeah, the sequels.
but
We'll talk about that later.
yeah. But I
But
mean,
yeah, how they separated like the real world and the Matrix by having like a green tint over the Matrix was
and that's,
just like
yeah.
that hint that you needed to go, okay, there's something slightly off when I'm watching this in the Matrix. And then you have the real world and it's like gritty and there's colors and it's like doesn't have that green tone. You're like, okay, I could see the cinematography that they like were portraying or getting through, and it was just amazing, so good.
And even like at the time, like it's super obvious now, but I can recall at the time not even really noticing it till like the movie was almost over. And
Oh,
it's
I
it's
noticed
all
it.
dude, I did not notice it at all. I just thought that was kind of like the palette, the color palette was just kind of like just something to make the worlds look different, but not like a preemptive thought. You know what I mean? Just as like they were like, oh well, we made the movie, so now we have to make it look. We have to show a slight difference between the real world and the Matrix. How are we going to do that? It almost felt like an afterthought.
Right.
And it's like it took me a while, but like after all was said and done, and then I watched it again, I'm like, holy crap. Like that really does, even if you don't notice, even if subconsciously you notice it, but you don't notice it right away, like you don't put two and two together.
No, it's
Like
subtle. It's subtle until
very subtle.
I. He said, "Welcome to the real world." Then it's like, oh. Then you got these dark blue colors. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
something's different.
It- And I even think that's part of the reason why I didn't notice it because I almost felt like they were, it didn't seem premeditated. It almost, like I said, it seemed like they filmed the whole movie and they said, oh, we have to do something to slightly separate these two worlds. And so I kind of thought later on, like it was kind of an afterthought, but you watch it and you're like, oh no, it's obviously very well thought out.
Yeah,
And they very intentionally, very much so intentionally did that. And it definitely adds to how good the movie is. Like you might not notice it or think about it right away, but the more you kind of watch it, because again, I'm one of those people, I'll watch a movie over and over and over again because I'm convinced I missed something.
right.
And it's very well thought out. The first one.
For sure. Okay, so here's some deep thoughts. When the agents take somebody over and they have to kill them, they're killing innocent people.
Yeah, but they don't care.
Yeah. Do you think they are just considered batteries still? Or are they actually people with thoughts?
I don't know. 100%. If you're talking about AI, I guess is what we would call it now. Back then, that's not what we would have called it, but let's just call it AI.
Yeah.
If you're talking about like it's basically AI, yeah, they don't care. Machines, they have no emotion whatsoever, so why would they care? You know what I mean? Like they didn't
Well,
care
well,
how they got where they went.
Neo and his crew actually kill a bunch of people too. Like when the agents take over police officers.
Yeah. But if your mind hasn't been freed, you're an enemy because they can become you. I mean, like they specifically say that. Like I think Neo does kind of say something about like maybe not like, oh, we're killing innocent people, but he is kind of like, well, what about the people that they turn into? And he basically says, like, if you're still plugged into the Matrix, you're an enemy. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's how Morpheus approaches it. Is that
yeah, and
anyone still connected is an enemy because they use the red dress simulator, I think, or something like that.
yeah, to kind of show it. Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, if you're unfortunately, if you're still plugged into the system, you can become an agent at any time. Yeah, you're not really relevant. And most people aren't relevant anyways. So, I mean, most people aren't the one. You know what I mean? Like, none of us are. We're just cogs in the
Batteries, huh?
machine,
We're just
pretty much.
batteries.
Batteries for these multi-million dollar corporations, you're daggone right.
So, next question. Cypher wished he could just stay in the Matrix and be oblivious to all of it. Would you take the pill to get out of the Matrix or would you stay in it?
As much as I want to say I wouldn't, I 100% would. Like, you, I mean, first of all, he's not just going back into the Matrix. He's going back into the Matrix exactly what he want to he's getting exactly what he wants when he goes back in. So he's basically telling him like, "Oh, I want to be rich. I don't need to be famous, but, I want to be rich, this and
No, no,
that."
no. I'm just saying for you. He was in a pipe dream. They weren't going to ever let him get back in the Matrix. Once you're out, you're out. But I'm saying for you, would you have wanted to go back into the Matrix or would you have rather stayed out of it?
Oh, I would have went back in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Well, that is
Once you
not a
were.
world. Yeah. No. That is not a world I would want to live in. Absolutely not. I would say, yeah, plug me back in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's selfish. It's extremely selfish, but I'm a very selfish person. I am the first to admit that. So, yeah, plug me back in all day long.
So you'd rather not have control over yourself. Let the robots have you.
I would rather be happy with them controlling me than miserable with my own freedom, I guess is a way to say it. Absolutely. Because ignorance is bliss, man. If if you're aware of what's going on, you're probably
Yeah.
going to be miserable. But if you're not aware of any of
Uh,
that stuff going on and you're living a great life, yeah, plug me back in all day.
let's say you're aware.
Even after I've been plugged back in,
Yeah.
plug me back in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If I can choose the way I want to live my life out, absolutely. Plug me back in.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
don't want to be famous. Just give me tons of money so I don't have to worry about anything ever. Plug me
Yeah.
back in all
You're
day.
not fit. You're not famous. You're just you're you.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. As long as I got money. That's all that matters, because money rules the world. You could say money don't buy happiness, but
Uh-huh.
I bet you people with a ton of money sure are a lot happier than people without it. And you ever seen anybody on a jet ski that's not happy?
The ones that get paralyzed.
It doesn't count. That's them being stupid.
Oh, okay.
During like peak jet ski activities, these people are happy. And you know what can buy you a jet ski?
Uh-huh.
Money.
Have you ridden on a jet ski?
No, I'm not a water person. I don't like jet skis.
Oh, jeez.
It was more of an analogy type of scenario. I'm not saying like,
Okay,
like
I take my question back. Never mind.
I mean, I don't want a jet ski, but you know what I'm saying. Most people are
Oh,
happy if they get
jeez.
on a jet ski.
All right. Yeah, I vote not getting plugged back into the Matrix. I'd rather not be a battery. I'd rather make my own choices.
I mean, but that's even the thing. Even the ones that are unplugged, they're
Mm-hmm.
still being kind of controlled by the Matrix. And if you watch the first one, let's say 75% of the first one, knowing what you know, how it's basically like nobody's ever defeated the machines, nobody can stand against them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that. Well, what are the chances that I'm involved with the scenario that will flip this around? Like, I don't want nothing to do with it. I'd
Uh-huh.
rather be, like I said, ignorance is bliss, man.
Oh yeah.
I'd rather be happy and stupid than smart and actually know what's going on and be miserable because of the BS.
And I'd rather be free.
Mm. In a world where there is no real freedom, are you actually free just because you're not plugged in? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Mm, I ain't eating that gruel. You know what I mean? I'm not eating
It tastes like
corn
Wheaties.
soup. Ugh, I don't. Yeah, and I'm sure that crap tastes like junk too.
It's good. Cream of wheat.
Oh, cream of wheat is trash.
Still good.
Ugh, gross.
Yeah,
No, thank
you
you.
and you're over there getting hoity-toity about what ramen you eat. Come on now.
Hey. I'm not okay. Ramen is good, but I'm not so broke that I have to regularly eat ramen. If I eat ramen now, it's because I want to eat ramen.
I ate it today. Delicious.
I'm not saying it's not bad, but there's like 20 other things in my
Oh,
refrigerator right now
jeez.
that are way better than ramen. So I'm not going to eat that ramen until I run out of those 20 other things.
All right, all right.
Unless we're
Back,
talking real ramen, that's a whole nother
back,
story.
back on topic.
You
All
brought
right,
it up.
I did. Next one. How did the ending of the first one impact you?
I mean, it does kind of blow you away a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because again, this is before we know the story. And it is one of those things where you're watching it and the whole thing with the Oracle, they kind of mislead you into thinking like, oh, he's not the one. So of course you get that thought of like, you start to doubt that he is the one. So you start to kind of think like, oh, the more and more this goes on, it points to him not actually being the one. And when they kind of get to that point to where you think he's going to get out and then he ends up getting killed, like in that moment I'm like, yeah, there's no way he's the one. How does he die? How does he get killed in the Matrix if he is the one? Like, it's just not going to happen. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. All right, technical difficulty there.
Okay.
All right, yeah. So, like, you kind of get to a point to where he dies, and you're like, there's no way he's the one. So the fact that you're still questioning it up until the fact that he gets killed, and then the second that happens, they kind of expose like, oh, well, Trinity's like, oh, the Oracle told me I would fall in love with the one, and he would be a dead man. And then you're like, oh crap. Then you kind of realize the story that's unfolding. And like I said, it was a back and forth. They had you thinking he's not the one. He is the one. He's not the one. He is the one. And then when you find out he literally is the one, it really does kind of, I feel like for me it hit a lot harder because I convinced myself at one point he wasn't. And then when they kill him, I'm like, oh, there's no way he is. Like, what's going on? And then he does his whole I turn into the Matrix and I can see the code and all that. Like, it was great. Like, I loved what they did. I loved the way they did it. And again, it's one of those, how did you come up with that story? Like, who comes up with that?
Yeah, I like how he breaks the, I don't know, third wall, fourth wall, fifth wall, whatever wall it is. And then he actually sees everything in code format. Because that's what they
Yeah.
look at in the real world is the code format. But he's able to see the Matrix in that way, which was just so cool. And then he's just able to manipulate things differently.
Yeah. Like, I definitely feel like the more I kind of think back on it, maybe they did more than I thought, but I feel like they could have kind of touched on that a little bit more. Like, they could have showed it more. Because I know they did here and there, showed him kind of like seeing things in the code. But I feel like they could have done that a little bit more and maybe represented it a little bit better so that we can kind of comprehend it. But I remember that first one way more than I did any of the other ones. And, the first one, you're discovering everything, so they're not going to give you a lot of information. So they might have kind of leaned into it a little bit more in the second, third, the fourth one too, I guess. But
Yeah,
I really, I
it,
just want to dump. I want to
uh,
dump on the other movies that they made, but I'm trying to focus on the first one.
yeah, just focus on the first right now.
I'm
So
trying.
they had a lot of setup that they had to do in the first one, and they executed it
Very
in the
well.
middle of it so that there was payoffs in the end. And it's just all encompassing great movie for like sci-fi. And it
I
could
would
have been
say
it's like a solo film and it would have been fine.
absolutely. Like, it almost feels like it was written just as that one film.
Well, I think originally it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that's the case.
And then they came out with the other ones.
I mean, it definitely was like, when it comes to like sci-fi, it was one of the biggest sci-fi movies, I would say, of our generation. Because you've got a ton of sci-fi movies that were made before that, and they're phenomenal. But I guess you would say, like 70s, 80s, 90s kids, this is definitely the sci-fi movie of our generation. It was one of the best ones. Let's go 80s and 90s. I won't throw 70s in there, but I can't think of any sci-fi film that's been made afterwards that is as good. I could think of a few that I think personally are up there with it, but
Uh-huh.
if you really think about it, it's definitely not better. Like, I'm a big fan of a Europa Report, very sci-fi space travel type of movie, but as good as that movie is, it just doesn't hold a candle to The Matrix. And even like The World's End. I love The World's End. I think it's one of the greatest sci-fi movies made in the last like 30 years or so. Is it better than The Matrix? No, not at
No.
all. The Matrix is on it. No, it's on its own pedestal, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, if I'm comparing like how many times I've watched movies, like World's End, I would say it would be like 3. Matrix would be like 30.
Oh, dude, I think I've The World's End. I think I watched that when it came out. Easily 30 or more. Like
Well, I'm not
I
actually saying
loved it.
how many I watched it. I'm just giving you an example of comparing
Yeah.
how many times I watched The Matrix versus The World End.
And you might even be right. Like, I think I've definitely watched The Matrix a lot. Like, a lot. I've seen it. I get on those little kicks where I'll watch the same movie over and over again for a couple months or something like that. And The Matrix was definitely on there. Like, trying to remember, there was one that I wanted to see in theaters, and I didn't know my wife at the time. It was somebody else that I was dating, and she was completely annoyed with the amount of times like I would talk about it. I would say, "Hey, we're going to go watch it again. We're going to go watch it again." And of course, the following sequels weren't anywhere near as good. But again,
Yeah.
it was one of those like I missed something. I had to have missed something. Like the first one was so great. There's no way these other ones aren't good. And that being said, the other ones have their moments. But
Yeah.
storyline wise, they did not carry the torch that the first one sent them. You know what I
I
mean? Like it
it's because
fizzled.
they treated the story differently with the next two. It wasn't the same as the first one. They had a different like agenda to do for the
Well, I mean,
second and third.
like the second one specifically was definitely like a love story. It was more about like Neo and Trinity love story. The third one was really about like Zion and like their community. And the last one was just a poor attempt at trying to revive something that really
You want to
I
get
guess
into it? Do you want to get into the sequels now?
I mean I don't know the was it Reloaded and what's the third one?
Reloaded, Revolutions, and Resurrections.
Okay. So I know the first one and Resurrections the best because of course Resurrections is still fairly recent. So I remember a lot, but like Reloaded and crap, was it
Revolution?
Revolutions and Resurrection, right?
Yeah, Resurrections.
Okay. So the two in the middle, I didn't watch a lot, didn't really like them, don't remember a lot of details. But the other two, the first one I remember a lot, I watched the crap out of it. The
Yeah.
newer one, I remember some stuff, but I don't know the details as well as I do the first one. But I say, yeah, let's just get into it. Why not?
All right. I guess here we go. Reloaded. So I'm gonna start off by saying the ending of this movie was by far one of the most hated endings of mine that I have ever seen.
Now, that's the one where they show like the creator or whatever at the
No,
very
no, no,
end, kind of.
no,
Okay.
nope. That's where Agent Smith got into someone's brain in the real world, and they put "to be continued" and then stopped it there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It got into the guy that was on the ship or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I I can't get on board with a to be continued to begin with. Like,
One of the worst endings ever. I
yeah,
hated it so much for years. I just hated how it ended.
well, like I said, to be continued is a mistake. Like, if you ever end a movie with to be continued, that
Yeah,
just means you didn't have a clever way to show us it's to be continued.
yeah.
Like,
They just
if,
stopped it right there. Boop. Right
yeah,
as soon
yeah,
as
that's,
the enemy is within striking distance of our hero, it's yeah, to be continued.
yeah,
Oh
see, that's,
my,
that's
why?
garbage.
Why? Oh, that was so annoying. Okay,
Now,
I got that out of my system. But Revolutions, they came out with more and more like new characters. They kind of developed characters in the Matrix. Some are actually programs running and not really real people, which I kind of liked. So it's
yeah,
like AI programs working independently of each other that still need to work within the rules of the Matrix.
yeah. Like, I definitely, now that you're saying it, like the second one, I didn't really like much at all because, like I said, for one, it's basically a romance. I'm not into romance. I think 99% of romance movies are so unrealistic that it's hard to watch because then it gives people these like you get to this like, oh well, he swept me away to Bermuda for the weekend and da 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 da, and it's like all these elaborate things that it's like it's just not reasonable. So it's like Reloaded. The only thing that was cool was like the highway fight on the truck and how they built like that whole highway specifically just to film this
Yeah,
like fight scene. Like that was the only thing I really remember. And the ghosts, is that what they were?
yeah,
The yeah, those guys like those characters were cool. I liked that. But
yeah,
other than those two things, I don't really remember much about that movie. The third one got more into like Zion and like the real world. And that I did like. I liked the fight scene at the end where it's like the machines are breaking in and they're trying to fight them and like basically hold them off. And I wasn't even against the fact that like in the third one, Neo basically makes a deal with the machines and is like, I'll stop Smith if you leave the humans alone, essentially. Like that was okay. I was into it. I didn't hate the third one. The second one, I really hated the second one. Now, the last one, I go back and forth. Depends on if you catch me now versus tomorrow, I might say something different tomorrow than I say now. But that second one was just Reloaded was garbage. It was total garbage.
um, I was digging it. I liked it. I don't. I don't mind the rom com stuff.
Ugh.
I know you don't either because you watched Warm Bodies and liked it.
I don't
Uh,
even want to talk about that. I don't even want
but
to talk about that.
listen, we
That's
had a
irrelevant. No,
big
no,
conversation that you were
no.
throwing a fuss that it was a horrible movie, and then now, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Warm Bodies was pretty awesome.
Yes, thank you.
I crapped on
So
it a lot. and it turned out to be a really, really good movie. It was. I'm upset with myself that I took so long to watch it because it actually is a legit, really good film, really great film. I hate to admit you're right, but you were right.
Thank you. I think that if you rewatch Reloaded now, you may enjoy it more than you did when you first watched it a few years ago.
See, and even back then when it first came out, I watched it because, like I said, I was convinced I missed something, and I was convinced that
Right.
it was a great movie, but I missed what made it great. Kind of looking back on it, the only thing I liked about that movie was those two characters, like the ghosts, and the the fight scene on the freeway. Those are the only things I recall. Like, I don't even remember how it ended. Like, you literally had to just tell me. And like, because I was confusing it with the third one, and the only thing I remember about the second one was the fight scene. I remember they were really, really heavily leaning into the whole love story and those two characters, the ghosts. Other than
Yeah.
that, that's all I remember. And one of those three things I hated.
Yeah, well, they had the Oracle that she passed away, so they had a new actress to play her.
That's true.
And then the like park scene where Agent Smith like multiplies into a bunch of Agent Smiths.
Now, see, that scene was actually pretty cool, but
Yeah.
the CGI was so bad that it was really hard for me to like really get into that scene. Like, I liked it. It was cool, but it's kind of like, I mean, we're talking the 2000s. You're telling me they couldn't have done better CGI than that?
No.
Like, oh
It
man.
it wasn't on the level to be able to do better, but they wanted to push the envelope of like copy paste. Like when was the last time you ever saw multiple of the same actor in a movie other than Multiplicity with like three or four?
Oh, Multiplicity. What a
Okay,
phenomenal.
okay. Other than Multiplicity with three or
Michael
four.
Michael Keaton is the man.
Uh-huh.
Besides Beetlejuice, which is trash.
You didn't answer my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that? Repeat.
What other movie has that many copies
Oh.
of a character other than Multiplicity?
To that extent, nothing. Like, even Multiplicity doesn't really compare because, like you said, you're talking three or four of the same person versus 50 or more.
Yeah, yeah. It was ridiculous. That was like revolutionary. That was pushing the boundaries of like CG that it got into unbelievable because it was. But it still worked on the level of what the heck? There's all these Agent Smiths.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It was 100% fun to watch. I just wish it looked a little bit more cleaner, which, again, like what you're saying is not wrong. But I mean, hell, look back 1990, what, 3, Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that's a great example. Jurassic Park is phenomenal. It's the effects are just astonishing. And you look at a movie like that was made what 6 years before Matrix, and you're kind of like, you know, hell, I mean, what, the second one was probably made, let's assume it was 2005. I think it was a little earlier than that, but you're talking at least 10 years later. And I just felt like it could have looked better, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the best it could have looked. But that was one of the few things that did bother me about that fight scene even though it was really cool, I really enjoyed it. And, it was one of the things that did kind of stick out in that film, besides the sub or the highway fight really overshadowed everything else.
Yeah, they had a lot of good fighting in it, but they took his character from being like this hero character and turned him into the savior character, and it's like, well, he's gonna bring Trinity back from the dead after she dies, and then it's like, okay, and then it takes a turn after a while, and then it's like we're gonna start blending in the next one reality with Matrix.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So then after Reloaded, we get into Revolution, and he gets stuck in like the halfway point, where there's the train keeper or the
I would say like the
watch.
subway or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, where he gets in stuck in the half between eventually, and it's like, how does he get out of there? So
Do they
then
even really thoroughly explain that?
no.
Say, yeah, I didn't think so. See, and that's my problem with, I guess, the second and third one is like the first one. I feel like everything was explained as thoroughly as it could have been at that time to make you understand what they were trying to do. But then I feel like they got to a point to where they didn't know what they were trying to do. So they just tried any random thing that they thought would fly.
Yeah. But in this one, they're trying to make him be the bridge for the machine world and the human world.
I mean,
But then they just take it like there's all these other characters in the Matrix that are now supernatural, and it's like we have people hanging on the walls like they do. They have people that could tell the future, or this other one that can have all the information because he buys the information. Then you have this little girl that's a program that Neo now cares about and wants her to survive with the Oracle. So there's like he becomes hacker, then he becomes hero, then he becomes like savior, and then he becomes halfway bridge of Matrix in real life. And then of course Agent Smith's just doing his cloning thing.
yeah.
And then it resolves itself. It's like, okay, well, if Agent Smith fixes the anomaly, which is Neo, then the whole system's going to fix itself. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like I feel like the last one, the Resurrections, they could have really kind of come full circle with everything if they really wanted to. But because like the second and third one weren't great compared to the first one. But with this new one they made recently, they really could have taken their time and really made it work. And it's
Yeah,
very obvious. The new one
yeah,
they just made because the other ones made a ton of money. They didn't
yeah,
make it because they had a conclusion to the story. They made it because, and of course, anyone that knows the movie is kind of poking fun at the fact that, oh, well, we kind of have to do it or else they're just going to do it. Because they mention, like, if I'm not mistaken, in the last one, they do kind of say, like, oh, we'll either make it with you or without you, which is essentially what happened. They
yeah,
told the Wachowskis, like, if you don't want to do it, then we'll just get someone else to do it. So
yeah.
like I see why they kind of leaned in heavily on that, but at the same time, you should have been focusing on how can we conclude this story properly? And who cares what they do with it after that? If they want to keep on going with it and undo whatever you did, then let them do it. But one of the Wachowskis came back for this last one, and he should have concluded it the way it deserved to be concluded, and I feel like that's not what he did.
No. Yeah, the last one, what is it? Resurrections.
Yeah.
They really were just trying to flip it on its head and go, Neo isn't the one. It was actually Trinity. And that kind of like backpedals all of what was done in the first three movies. So now you take that whole trilogy and let's just set it on the shelf. And then now we have this, I don't even know, confused Neo that just blue pilling it.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
even.
it definitely was. It was not the way, like, the idea of what they were doing, I'm not against, but the way they did it just didn't pay off. Like, you could have done that and you could have made it pay off. They didn't make it pay off.
It was just frustrating to watch.
Yeah. There was some really cool stuff to it that I did like, but for the most part, it was obviously a cash grab. Like,
The
it just
only
wasn't
idea that
good
I
or thought
liked
out.
was the zombie idea of like, oh, we're just gonna turn the whole block into like crazy agent people.
See, and like even that, like as you're saying it,
Yeah.
I don't really remember that. It just kind of no, I've seen that newer one quite a few times, and
You
I
don't
like
remember
Doogie.
that scene where the whole like group attack?
Maybe slightly vaguely. Really, honestly, the one thing I remember the most about that new one is that Doogie Howser was in it.
The blue pill pusher.
Yeah, like MPH was awesome. I mean, he was great, but at the same time, it was just like, I mean, he's essentially the new Agent Smith in his own way. And
Right.
even though they did have like a, quote unquote Agent Smith in it, it just like he was just basically the new villain,
Yep.
and it was
He's the
just a
new
way to,
boss.
yeah, it was a way to shoehorn somebody other than Smith in it because the new Smith eventually, if I'm not mistaken, starts helping Neo essentially.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
Yeah, same here. That last one, like I've seen it at least 5 or 6 times, and I'm just kind of like, the only thing I really remember is a lot of the montage stuff they did where they're talking about,
So much montage.
yeah, like making the game. And like that idea was really cool. Like Neo is now being convinced that he's a game creator and all these things didn't really happen. It's a game he created. That was a cool
Sure.
idea. But the execution just did not pay off.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to love it. I really wanted it to be phenomenal. And
So
I've
did
even
I.
watched it so many times that I'm just like, again, I must be missing something. But I'm not missing nothing. It's just not that good. It's pretty obvious that they kind of either you make it or we're going to make it. So I
Yeah.
can't be mad at the guy for, actually making the movie, but at the same time,
Well, you don't have to like it. All right. Final question. Matrix Extras. Did you enjoy the Animatrix, the game, or the MMO?
okay, so I do recall watching all of the Animatrix, and just in general, the stories. I thoroughly enjoyed the Animatrix. It was kind of like reminds me of Love, Death, and Robots, to where it's kind of like separate stories
Yeah,
told in
different
different,
creators. Yeah.
yeah, different animation styles and all that stuff, but they all did kind of tie into the Matrix, and I thought that was really cool. The games, I remember Enter the Matrix, and then there was Path of Neo. I can't remember which one was which because I played them both, but I loved the games. I don't think there was one of the games, I think the online, maybe the MMO,
Yeah.
that I didn't play. But the other two, the Enter the Matrix and the Path of Neo, they were great. I loved those games. They were so much fun. I played the crap out of them. It's even to a point now to where I'm looking online to see where I can buy it because I want to play it on my computer. You know what I mean? It's been that long. I mean,
Uh, Probably Good Old Games. Not a
I think,
sponsor.
hey, yeah, I think I did look at Good Old Games. Not a sponsor, but come on, that'd be nice.
But I think they might have a couple of the Matrix games on there.
I think I did see one of them on there at one point in time.
Yeah. I played, I think, two of them. I think I played Enter the Matrix, and then I played the MMO, the Matrix Online. I don't
Okay.
think I played Enter, or it was like the Path of Neo or something. I don't think I played that one.
Okay, yeah, I think, yeah. What was I call it? Enter the Matrix? I think it is Path of Neo.
Yeah, I think it's Enter the Matrix and Path of Neo are the
Okay,
standalone
okay.
games.
Yeah. I got confused. I see.
One of them you fight like Agent Smith, and he's like giant Agent Smith. He's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
He's
that's
just
Enter
like,
the Matrix.
okay, that was awesome. I
It was. It
It
was.
would have been so good if they could have done that with that kind of ending in the movies, but it would have
Yeah.
just been too silly looking.
Yeah, they definitely wouldn't have been able to pull it off like they did in the game.
There was a movie, a Bollywood movie. I think it's called Robot 1.0. They did kind of something like that, and it was silly, but it was kind of neat.
But I mean, the Bollywood movies, you can kind of get away with that silliness. Isn't that kind of what they're known for?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Is that the one where the guy turns into a giant like ball?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen clips, but I've never seen the actual movie.
Oh, the movie's good. I watched one and two. I think there's a third one, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
And it's
looks like
just
I'll have
like,
to find those.
yeah, it's just like a scientist creates this like AI robot that looks like a younger version of himself.
Okay.
And of course, the robot goes on the fritz and he's got to stop it.
Actually, the idea behind it doesn't sound bad. Now that I
Yeah,
know that that's what it is, it actually sounds pretty good.
it's a funny movie.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Bollywood name for it is, but the translated was Robot 1.0, and then the next one, of course, is Robot 2.0.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely. Looks like I know what I'll be doing today before I go to bed.
Well, that was our synopsis, review, discussion of The Matrix. I hope you all enjoyed it and have a good one.
Bye.